Respiration. What is respiration? Respiration is a process by which energy is released from the food. Now, during respiration, if oxygen is used, and it will be called as aerobic respiration. When oxygen is not used for respiration, it is called anaerobic respiration. In all organisms, glucose is broken down to form a three carbon molecule called pyruvate. Pyruvate is formed in the cytoplasm of cells. There are three ways how this pyruvate is used. So here we can see the schematic diagram of how glucose is broken down by various pathways. First, glucose in every conditions in cytoplasm they will be converted to a three carbon molecule called pyruvate, and in the absence of oxygen in yeast, pyruvate is converted to ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. If the pyruvate is formed in our muscle cells, due to lack of oxygen, it will be converted to lactic acid and energy. And if oxygen is present, like in aerobic organisms, in mitochondria, pyruvate will be converted to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So, these are the three ways how glucose is broken down by various pathways. In muscles, the anaerobic respiration takes place. Pyruvate gets converted to lactic acid and energy. Lactic acid is formed in our muscles during strenuous exercise and it results in fatigue and body pain. In yeast, the anaerobic respiration takes place. Pyruvate gets converted to ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. The respiration in yeast is also called as fermentation. In mitochondria, during aerobic respiration, pyruvate gets converted to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The energy which is synthesized in the mitochondria is stored in the bonds of the chemical compound called adenosine triphosphate or ATP. When the bonds of the last phosphate or the terminal phosphate of ATP is broken, about 30.5 kilojoules per mole of energy is released. This energy is utilized for various activities of our body like contraction of muscles, synthesis of protein and conduction of nerve impulses, etc. So here you can see mitochondria and ATP molecules are stored in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Pyruvate enters into the mitochondria, that's when aerobic respiration takes place. Now for aerobic organisms, since they need oxygen for respiration, they have to take in oxygen and then give out carbon dioxide. In plants, the gaseous exchange takes place through openings on their leaves and stems, which is called as stomata. So they can breathe in oxygen and they can give out carbon dioxide. In fishes, the gills are the respiratory organs. You can see the gills here. Gills are richly supplied with blood vessels. So how do they take in oxygen? Fishes take in dissolved oxygen present in the water. The dissolved oxygen present in the water gets absorbed by the gills when the water passes through the mouth and then flow out through the gills. So water enters through the mouth and flow out through the gills. At that time the blood vessels present in the gills will absorb that dissolved oxygen which has been circulated in the whole body of fishes. Whereas in human beings, lungs are the respiratory organs. Lungs are completely filled with balloon-like structures called alveoli, which are richly supplied with blood vessels. In addition to that, in order to attract oxygen and to transport the oxygen, RBC of blood contains a pigment called as hemoglobin. Here we can see the human respiratory system. The air first enters through the nostrils as well as the mouth and reaches a part called pharynx. And then the air passes through the trachea. The first part of trachea has got a sound box called larynx. The trachea is supported by rings of cartilage. It is to prevent the collapsing of this air passage. The trachea divides into two bronchi. Each bronchi enters into lung. After reaching the lungs, the bronchi gets divided into bronchioles, and the bronchioles will enter into structures called alveoli. And then you can also find diaphragm muscle below the chest, and the lungs are supported by skeletal structures called ribs. Human respiratory system. In human beings, air first enters through the nostrils and the mouth and reaches the pharynx. The nostrils are lined by fine hairs that filter the air as we breathe. The pharynx also has got mucus that can help to remove the dust particles, trap the germs, and then throw it out through sneezing or coughing. Next, the air will pass through the trachea, and that is supported by the rings of cartilage. These rings ensure that the air passage does not collapse due to the pressure of air. The trachea divides into two bronchi and enter each lung. Within the lungs, the bronchi further divides to form bronchioles that enter each alveoli. The alveoli is richly supplied with blood vessels. The oxygen which is present in the alveoli now enters into the blood, and in the blood there is hemoglobin to attract those oxygen molecules, which is transported to our body. The carbon dioxide present in the blood enters the alveoli, and then we will breathe it out. The process of breathing. There are structures which can help in the breathing. When we breathe in, what happens is our ribs get lifted. We lift our ribs, our diaphragm gets flattened, and the chest cavity becomes large as a result. This forces the air through our nostrils and mouth to enter into our lungs. So the air enters through our nostrils and mouth, passes through the pharynx, trachea, bronchi, and ultimately they will reach the lungs. Now, when we breathe out, the reverse process happens. When we breathe out air, we lower our ribs, lift our diaphragm, and so the chest cavity becomes smaller. Then the air will be forced to go out of our lungs, come out through our nostrils.